on this podcast, we have rules.
Yeah.
We follow the rules.
Uh-huh.
When the Driver Championship is decided, we just dive straight into that.
So
big congratulations for Max Verstappen claiming yet another Drivers' Championship.
Genuinely big congratulations, though, because this is probably his hardest one, right?
You're what?
This is the hardest.
What do you think? Make your case.
Make my case. I mean, he's been having a crisis of personality.
Count them off. 1. Who has Max beaten this year? Number 1, his own devils.
Yes, he's beaten his own devils. 2, absolute team turmoil.
Yeah.
They have been, his Red Bull's name has been besmirched. It has been muddied.
I believe everything that Verstappen says, and everything that they tell him on the radio is junk and wrong.
Yep, exactly. It's been really hard for him. No support. So Perez has been
number 3. Commentators telling him that he should sleep instead of staying up all night. What the fuck do they know? This guy's a 4-time champion.
He's been in 3 world championships at once, 2 of them virtual. Right. It's really hard work. He's burning the candles. He's what's a better terminology than burning it? What's a Formula 1 version of saying that? He's wearing out his tires.
He's doing the donuts in both directions at once.
Double donut. Exactly. But all jokes aside, Rod, that car has not been very good.
This is the second half of the matter, I think.
Yeah, it's been really hard and really tough for him to drive. Now, look, the car's not been very good. I put in talking marks for those playing along at video at home.
Not been very
the car's been very good.
It's barely a car.
I think literally every other team on the circuit would be like, in the paddock, anybody in the lower half would be like, this car's fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, can we get that car, please?
Yeah, can we have that one? If you don't want it, you're just throwing it out. It's like walking through Turak and looking at the stuff that people put on their nature strips.
Or going to the op shop at Turak. The stuff that's not good enough for them to keep is like better than anything you get anywhere else.
That I could ever afford. So tricky for him, but plauded. These are the plaudits. If we're going to say that we've always said this is talk of, F1, Super License F1 podcast standards that we have.
Sure.
We always say, judge the driver not by their results, but by where the car would be without them, I think. And Max Verstappen kind of emerged in his career from taking a Toro Rosso into a positions that it shouldn't be. Same with Charles Leclerc, same with even Sebastian Vettel before him, Daniel Ricciardo as well. These are drivers who,
they're all drivers.
Outpace their cars. These are all drivers, right? This is what defines a driver car in Formula 1. And I think Max, it was tricky. There was a point where Lando Norris looked like he was just going to win maybe the rest of the races, or Carlos Sainz or Charles Leclerc, and Max wasn't going to win another race. And it kind of turned out to be the case. He's not really going to win any more races, but he's doing enough to wrangle that car into good positions every weekend. And that's good. That's a world champ to me, Rod. I don't know what standards you have. For the guy with the most points, who had to go through some turmoil, that's a world champ.
I'll tell you what, when he went through that turmoil, he was my champion.
He was my champion. He's the champion of our hearts.
I mean, he obviously stoked up a lot of controversy during his championship with battle with Hamilton in 2021 for his driving standards, dirty driving standards. Some said, not me, but some people said.
Not you.
Lots of 99.9% of people said it was really a return to that same thing this year. But I mean, we forget because he sort of wrapped it up in Vegas, and Zach Brown was the bigger man, walked over, shook his hand and said congratulations, and he went, yeah, well, you said I could never win in a crap car, and here I am winning in a crap car. But we sort of forget that he wasn't in a crap car the whole year, and when he was, he won a shitload of races. So look, I mean, yes, you have to be good still to win those races, but he had a huge head start. Now that said, Lando Norris, I think, has had a pretty good year. But I mean, more beneficial for him rather than the results on the winners board or the runners up board is the experience that he'll get. So I think he's set up well for future years. Hopefully, the car is still, one that will be in contention. But I mean, look, yeah, I think Max has had his easy years, and these have been some hard years. So look, he's done the best with the car that he's had, hung it in there when he can, maximized it. He maximized it. And he's reaping the rewards. So look, well done to him.
What else could you ask for? Like, what are we looking for here? If we're not looking for this kind of performance, like, what do we want from world champions? Well, like we got a great season. We still got a great season of driving. It's competitive.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
It would have been great if we'd had it from day one. Like, we'd all like to see it go down the line, but this is pretty good in the history of Formula 1 over the last 20 years. This is a this is kind of peak. This is
I,
what you can hope for, is that if it's coming down to the
yeah.
last 3 races of the season,
Oh
it
yeah,
wasn't settled
absolutely.
halfway through. Great.
It could have been way, way. I mean, he could have won it 10 races ago if the car
If
remained
he was
dominant. That would have
good,
been
you know?
so boring and crap.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, we don't need to spend all day talking about this, but this thought experiment was going around that I thought, oh, I'll steal that for our show. This is a fun
Okay.
thing.
Please.
So imagine this, Zach. We know what the Red Bull car was like. We know what the McLaren car was like. We know what Max and Lando are like as drivers. But what say you, hypothetically, if Lando was the one behind the wheel of that Red Bull, and if Max was the one behind the wheel of that McLaren, what would the results have been like?
Good question.
Because
Interesting.
to start things off, let me offer this.
Please.
More often than not, when those two have come together, it's been Lando the one that's challenging and overtaking. So I feel like if you were to replay this whole season and switch those two drivers, I sort of feel like the overtakes would have been more aggressive, clear. Like I don't want to say cleaner, but they would have been clearer. He would have got them done and moved on and scored more positions. This is Max I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So this is going to sound harsh, but I feel like it would have been either very close or Max probably would have edged out Lando if the turns had tabled.
Yeah, if the turntables.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I still think Max wins in a McLaren. Partly because I think he would have established himself as the number 1 driver a little. Obviously Lando was the number 1 driver in the end, but I don't think Oscar Piastri. I think Oscar Piastri would have been more help.
Yeah,
how
sure.
much more would Max Verstappen have won this world championship if he swapped Perez and Piastri? I think way more.
That's even a
Yeah, I
that
think
is
that
definitely
Piastri,
another question. I mean, if I mean Max, the results that Max got, he got really without a rear gunner.
yeah, but not just like on race day, but in points accumulation.
Yeah.
If you've got your teammate also accumulating points behind you, battering off all the competition, then you end up with, think of all of these times when you've got not just a McLaren chasing Max or Max having to go and overtake McLarens, he's also having to overtake Ferraris. He's also having to fuck around with Mercedes.
Yeah.
And he's got no one, like, it's just him all the time.
So that's another good point. By the time that Lando was competitive, he also had to compete with Ferrari and McLaren, sometimes Alpine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like Max would have done a better job of taking the fight to them than Lando did.
Yeah.
That's just honest.
And that's also experience though, as well. Max has been there, done that. He's been fighting, whether it's Hamilton or et al. For his entire senior
Forget
career.
that Etal raced for a couple of races there. The US,
Yeah,
the IndyCar driver.
he came through the Red Bull program et al. I don't know why.
This show's silly.
It is silly. I mean, why not? How do you know someone went to university? They use the words et al. Because they had to write it in their fucking references at the bottom of every page. So I would say, yeah, Max wins in a McLaren. Lando finds the Red Bull harder to race with anyway. I mean, we aren't sitting here being like, wow, it's all Lando, not the car. I think the car's pretty good. I think the McLaren's a really, really, really good car. And people are saying, Formula One journalists that I respect personally, the Luke Smiths of the world, are saying that that's the best car of the season. Yeah, that is the fastest car around. If you give Max the fastest car, you don't have to look very far into the history of Formula One to know that he's the fastest driver with the fastest car. If anything, he might have even got more out of the McLaren than Lando Norris could because he's a better driver.
I still maintain that Ferrari probably have the edge on McLaren for best car across the whole season, but McLaren are really maximized at certain periods. Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but there's some drivers' championships for runners up and constructor championships. The top prize is still up for grabs, and they could get close. And I just feel like all these people who, not us, but people who lazily look at who's leading the constructors championship, well, that must be the best car. It doesn't always work out that way. And if you spend the whole year saying McLaren have the best car because they're on the top of the championship, and then Ferrari pip them, what are you gonna say?
Well, I'm going to say that Lando Norris needs to be a better driver because Oscar Piastri is untouchable.
Well, there we go. I don't know. Do we sum up with one word Verstappen and Lando's performance this year?
Yeah, okay. Why don't you go first on Max, and I'll think of one for Max as well.
For Max,
Yeah,
one
one
word.
word for Max's World Championship. Fourth? Is this the fourth one?
It is.
Jesus Christ.
Can we just say
So
fourth?
quick. Fourth.
I mean,
Man.
it's been. I mean, I don't even feel like he's learnt anything. I don't feel like he's like. I mean, for if it was Lando, I would say like growth. He's grown this year.
Mm.
Max, it's been more like just toughing it out, hanging in there. It's perseverance, really. So it's about resilience and building.
Oh, resilience is good. I was gonna, yeah. There is something like it's stubborn, right?
Yeah,
It's a real
that's true.
yeah. It's a real refusal, and stubborn not just with his competitors, but stubborn with his team and his car
And
and
the
himself.
way he
Being like,
drives
no,
and
I
standing up to the
am
stewards and
great.
everything.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a great one.
I am a world champion. I'm not letting this happen. Like, and
He had
that's
one
the
hand
real
on the trophy and he
test,
didn't
right?
want to let go.
No, and that is so it, right? There
That's
we've
him.
seen other drivers who like can get close, but he just gritted his teeth and just went, "No, I will do everything
I
I can."
refuse.
Yeah, I refuse. This is my world championship, and I will win it. If I have to do it on my own with one hand behind my back, I'm going to win it. He drove with one hand on the trophy and the other hand behind his back. He's driving with his fucking knees, mate. No,
With
he's
his
coming out of the
knees.
drive-through with his KFC.
Yeah.
He's driving with his knees. So, for Lando, one word for Lando Norris. Oof. I suppose you went first last time, so I can go first this time.
I said growth.
Yeah, I think green.
Green.
Yeah, similar thing. This is like a psychiatry session. Like when I say growth, what do you say? Green. Yeah, he's just it's it. But that's my frustration. Is that he's been in Formula One for a while now. I think
Yeah,
that
I was
there
gonna
are
say
he's
that.
still doing things where he's not the up and comer anymore. He's just one of these guys. You know, he's just part of this the stable of F1 drivers. So I hope there is more from him next year. But if I was him, I would be worried about the other guys that are around. The Russells, the Piastris,
Yeah. I mean,
the Colapintos.
yeah,
of
I
the
was going to
world.
say it happens sometimes to rookie drivers that they get dropped in the same situation that he found himself in kind of this year. And I mean, Piastri's, in his second year, but still, I mean, it hasn't been that long since he was in contention. You know what I mean? So, like, he hasn't been around for that long. So, with the experience that Lando has had, this year has felt like going right back to square one and saying, forget what you learned being a midfield driver or in contention for podiums. That all has to be reset because you need that championship.
Yeah, you got to hook it up every week, mate.
Yeah,
And there's no excuse. So yeah, I
Sorted.
think he's got it. I think he's got it though. Like I think he's got it in him to do it. And I think it'd be interesting to see if they've got the car for it next year and even 2026. But there's an opportunity here to be. There's probably only 4 or 5 guys on the grid right now who could be a world champion out of the 20 that we've got. Call it 22 to 24, depending on how many drivers actually get a bite at the cherry these days in any given season. And I would probably put him in the could they group, not the never group.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if it's going to happen, it needs to probably happen next year, end of Formula. You've got a great car. Can Red Bull do it without Newey? There's this. Will Ferrari be able to keep it consistent? They still fuck up on strategy like they did this weekend in Vegas. They're going to have new drivers drifting around with Hamilton.
Will Red Bull switch to a different supporting driver, and will that upset their dynamic?
Exactly. Right. Will Max take his foot off the pedal a little bit? This has been a hard season for him. Will he just kind of have a little bit of a, 4 championship hangover? That happens.
It's true.
So, yeah, if he's going to do it, it has to be end of Formula, like we're about to see, or start of new Formula. And that's not up to him at that point as well. That's can McLaren whip out a good car in 2026. So
I think the other thing he's learned is, I think the other thing that this year has told me about what he maybe might want to think about is being more consistent, and also that ruthlessness of, not just ruthlessness of the way you drive, but maximizing every single thing because you just never know when it's going to count. And I feel like that's a lesson that Hamilton had to learn. I mean, he probably learns it against Rosberg. It's a lesson that Verstappen always had. Every
Yeah,
single thing
just
counts.
fighting every
Scrap
yeah.
for everything.
Yeah, every
And
point.
Lando,
You're
I mean,
starting 18th. Like,
yes,
get to fourth. It matters.
it does. And I think Lando, as well as being just generally more consistent with that, will need to come and understanding that he has to scrap and fight to maximize every single thing all the time. And if he
Yeah,
can
I
do
think
that,
he's
he
learning that.
really
Though.
sets himself up.
That's the
He'll get
midfield driver change to leading driver, which is that midfield driver is like, oh, points. Yes, we got through a race. We got the points. Look how far up the group we got. You know, we really
Absolutely.
hooked up a good race day and a cool race weekend. I think that, but you see it with Lando, right? You see that he really wanted McLaren to make him number one driver and to like get these papaya rules sorted, because I think he did know that every point mattered, but he puts that on him. The real growth is putting that on himself and not being like, get the other guy out of my way, help me, and be more like, what can I do? Ask not what the McLaren can do for you, but ask what you can do for McLaren.
Some of the things that he said lately, which frankly I've been saying for the whole year just about, is he was like, people think that there were more opportunities for Piastri to help me than there were. There really weren't that many. And I was like, yeah, I know. Is what I've been screaming to everybody who says, like, get Piastri out, get that sandbag out the way so that Lando can win. I'm like, but that doesn't happen very often.
No. Yeah, it's not every race weekend that Piastri's like, oh, mate, I should have just given you all my batteries and all my tires. It would have been so
and
good
also
for
that
you.
he probably, like, the chances of him winning were way overhyped. He kind of admits that a little bit now, which is fine. That's great. I mean, he technically wasn't contention. He was the last one to be in contention.
Yeah,
but
you got to believe it if you're going to win it, right? You have to believe it.
Again, that's core to what we were saying before. But his hopes, his chances were overhyped as well, because at the end of the day, I mean, there's still 2 races left, but he only won 3 races this year. And my dude, there are 5 other drivers with only 1 fewer win than him. So that's not exactly a dominant performance.
No, exactly. Yeah, this is not like the other seasons where, like, if one guy is not winning it, the other guy is. It's actually been like for the second half of the season, it's been fantastic, because if you told me that Mercedes was going to win some races, I wouldn't have believed you.